The city lay hushed beneath its winter blanket. Snowflakes drifted lazily from the sky, soft as down, tumbling past dim street lamps and gathering on the rooftops below. Horses' hooves clopped faintly in the distance, muffled by the thick snow, and the occasional sound of laughter echoed from a street corner where children built snowmen beneath flickering gaslights. It was Christmas Eve, and the world outside was filled with cheer. But inside a tiny apartment on the upper floor of a narrow building, there was no abundance of riches, no roaring fire, no table set with feasts. Instead, there was simplicity. Thin curtains swayed slightly with the draft. Wallpaper was peeling at the corners, the furniture worn and tired, as if it too felt the weight of the passing year. Yet here in this small place lived something stronger than poverty, something warmer than the chill of December. Love. Jim and Della lived here. A young couple, just starting out in life, with little in the way of possessions but much in the way of devotion. Their home might have been small, but to them it was filled with laughter, warmth, and the kind of happiness money could never buy. Still, tonight's a quiet worry lingered in Della's heart. She stood by the window, looking down at the snowy street below, the lamplight reflected in her eyes. In her hand, she held a small purse, worn at the edges, its leather creased from being opened and closed too many times. She loosened the clasp and poured its contents onto the table. The sound was light, too light. Coins rolled across the wood, pennies, nickels, and a few dimes, all gathered with careful patience over weeks. She counted them once, then again. Then a third time, though, she already knew the answer. $1.87. That was all. She sank into a chair, pressing her hands to her cheeks. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve. The world outside seemed alive with anticipation. Families wrapping presents, shop windows glowing with ribbons and garlands. But for Della, joy felt out of reach. What could she possibly give Jim, the man she loved more than anything, with just $1.87? Her thoughts wandered to him as she sat there staring at the pitiful pile of coins. Jim, her husband, her companion, her safe harbor in a stormy world. He worked tirelessly, long hours at a modest job, earning just enough to keep their little home standing. This coat was worn, his shoes thin, yet he never complained. Each night when he returned, he greeted her with a smile, as though all the weariness of the day fell away the moment he saw her face. Her heart swelled as she thought of him. He deserved more. More comfort, more beauty, more joy than our lives could afford. And though she knew love was greater than gifts, she longed to give him something tangible, something he could hold in his hands and know without question how cherished he was. Her eyes drifted to the small mirror hanging on the wall. She rose, slowly, and stepped toward it. The glass was cracked in the corner, frame chipped, but it reflected her image clearly enough. And what it showed was her crown, her hair. Della's hair was long, thick, and shining, a cascade of chestnut waves that fell past her waist. When she brushed it, it shimmered like silk under the lamplight, glowing with a beauty rare to find in even the grandest of halls. More than once she had laughed with Jim, teasing that her hair might outshine all the jewels of a queen. Now, as she gazed at it in the mirror, her hand reached up, fingers slipping through the heavy strands. She let it tumble free, cascading over her shoulders like a river of autumn sunlight. It was her pride, her treasure, her one possession of true beauty. And as she touched it, a thought entered her heart. A wild, daring thought. Her breath caught, her fingers stilling in her hair. Could she? would she dare? She turned away from the mirror, her pulse quickening. For a long moment, she stood in silence, staring at the pitiful pile of coins. Then her lips curved into the faintest, trembling smile. "For Jim," she whispered to herself. "For Jim, it will be worth it." She tied her hair back with its ribbon, pulled her worn coat from the hook by the door, and stepped into the night. The snow kissed her cheeks. The cold nipped at her ears, but she hardly noticed. Somewhere in this city, there was a shop that would take her hair, and with the money, she would buy a gift that spoke louder than words. And as her footsteps crunched into the snowy street, she whispered again like a prayer carried on the wind. "For Jim, it will be worth it."
Della's boots left shallow prints in the soft snow as she hurried down the street, her breath a misty cloud in the cold morning air. The city was alive with holiday bustle, merchants shouting their wares, bells ringing from shop doors as customers hurried in and out, children tugging at their mothers' sleeves to peer at dazzling window displays. Everywhere there was light and color and warmth, everywhere but in her purse, where only a few coins jingled faintly. But Della carried something more precious than coins in that moment. She carried resolve. Her hands clenched tightly around the worn fabric of her coat, and her heart beat with a mixture of fear and determination. She knew where she was going. Down one narrow street, past a baker's shop where the smell of fresh bread drifted temptingly, and around the corner she found the little sign swinging in the wind. Madame Safroni, hair goods of all kinds. The letters were faded, and the shop itself was small, but Della stood staring at it as though it were a great cathedral. She hesitated, her gloved hand trembling on the doorknob. For a moment she thought of turning back, of clutching her long, shining hair close to her chest and waiting for another miracle. But then Jim's face rose before her eyes, his tired smile and his gentle voice, and that was all she needed. The bell tinkled softly as she entered. The shop smelled faintly of dust and old wood. Behind the counter stood a tall, thin woman with sharp eyes, her hair pulled into a severe knot. She looked at Della without expression, as though she had seen 100 girls like her walk in with desperate eyes and precious locks. "Will you buy my hair?" Della asked, her voice steady, though her heart was pounding. Madame Safroni stepped forward, her bony fingers tugging gently at the ribbon that held Della's hair in place. With one swift motion, the chestnut waves tumbled down, gleaming even in the dim light of the shop. Her eyes narrowed slightly, calculating. $20, she said at last. Della gasped, her hands flying to her chest. $20! She could hardly believe it. That sum was more than she had dreamed of, more than enough to buy a gift worthy of Jim. Without hesitation, she nodded. The scissors snipped, sharp and final. The sound echoed in her ears like the toll of a bell. Snip, 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 each cut taking away years of pride, each strand falling like autumn leaves onto the floor. When it was done, Della felt lighter, her head strange and bare, her neck suddenly cold. She glanced in the mirror on the wall and saw a stranger looking back. Her hair cropped short, framing her face in uneven curls. She touched it tentatively, a pang of sorrow rising in her chest. But when the woman pressed the money into her hand, the sorrow gave way to joy. $20. With quick, grateful words, she hurried back into the street, clutching the bills tightly as though afraid they might vanish. The city seemed brighter now, the snow whiter, the lights warmer. She walked swiftly, passing shop after shop, her eyes searching for the one thing, the perfect thing, that would match Jim's quiet dignity. Not something loud or gaudy, not something fleeting or frivolous, something lasting, something that spoke of love and respect. At last she found it.
In a small jewelry shop, nestled between two larger storefronts, her eyes fell on a simple display that made her breath catch. It was a chain, a watch chain. Not gold-plated, not flashy, but of pure, quiet strength. Smooth links that gleamed under the light. Sturdy yet elegant. Built to last for years, perhaps a lifetime. Della's eyes filled with tears. Jim's most treasured possession was his watch, a family heirloom, handed down from his father and from his father before him. But he carried it on a worn leather strap, frayed at the edges, unworthy of such a noble keepsake. This chain, she knew, was perfect. "How much?" she whispered. $21, the jeweler replied. Her heart skipped. 21! She counted the bills in her hand and found them just enough. With trembling fingers, she placed them on the counter, watching as the jeweler wrapped the chain in soft paper and tied it with a ribbon. When she held the small parcel in her hands, she felt as though she were holding the world. This was it, the gift that would show Jim how much she adored him, how deeply she treasured his every sacrifice. She stepped back into the snow, her heart racing with excitement. The city swirled around her, but she barely noticed. She walked quickly home, the little package tucked close to her chest, her mind already dancing with thoughts of Jim's smile when he opened it. But as she pushed open the door to their apartment, a wave of unease crept over her. She set the parcel on the table and went to the mirror again. Her short hair stuck out in curls, untamed and boyish. She tilted her head this way and that, frowning. Would Jim still think her pretty? Would he still smile when he looked at her? Or would he mourn the loss of the long, shining hair he loved to comb his fingers through? She bit her lip and began fussing with her hair, curling it with a hot iron, pinning it here, brushing it there, until at last she managed to tame it into something almost stylish. She stepped back, squinting at her reflection. She didn't look like herself, but perhaps, she thought with a shaky smile, perhaps Jim would forgive her when he saw the gift. She picked up the little parcel again, holding it to her heart. All the while, the clock ticked softly in the corner, reminding her that time was passing, and soon Jim would walk through the door. Outside, the snow fell heavier, blanketing the world in silence. Inside, Della waited, her hands trembling, her heart caught between fear and joy. And so the evening deepened with love and sacrifice quietly entwining, preparing to reveal their secret.
The little clock on the mantel struck 6. Its soft chime echoed through the apartment, each note like a gentle tap on Della's heart. She rose from her chair, smoothing her skirt, her fingers brushing nervously through her short curls for the 100th time. She tried to quiet her thoughts, but they tumbled over one another like restless waves. Any moment now Jim would walk through that door. Any moment his brown eyes would meet hers. Would they sparkle with love or flicker with shock at the sight of her shorn hair? The sound of slow, familiar footsteps echoed in the stairwell. Her heart leapt. She rushed to the door, pausing only long enough to press her hands to her cheeks, as though to hold in all the emotions threatening to spill out. Then the knob turned, and there he was. Jim stepped inside, tall and a little weary from the day's work. His coat was worn, his boots dusted with snow, but his presence filled the small room with quiet strength. He closed the door gently behind him, and for a long moment, he simply looked at Della. Not a word passed his lips. His eyes traveled from her face to her hair, cropped short and curling against her neck. He froze, his expression unreadable. Della's heart fluttered wildly. She tried to smile, but it trembled. "Jim, darling," she said softly, "don't look at me that way. I had my hair cut off and sold it. I couldn't have lived through Christmas without giving you a gift. It will grow back. You won't mind, will you? I just had to do it for you." Still, Jim said nothing.
He only stood there, his eyes fixed on her with that strange expression, an expression Della could not read. Was it disappointment? Was it sorrow? Or something else entirely? She rushed forward, her words spilling out in a rush. "My hair grows fast, Jim. You won't even miss it for long. I just couldn't let this Christmas pass without giving you something worthy of you. Please, say something." At last, Jim blinked, as though waking from a dream. He stepped toward her slowly, his face softening into a tender smile, though it was tinged with something deeper, something heavy with emotion. "Della," he whispered, his voice low and warm. "Nothing could make me love you less. Whether your hair is long or short, whether you're dressed in silks or rags, you are still my Della, always." Tears pricked her eyes and she let out a shaky laugh of relief. She reached for the little parcel on the table, pressing it into his hands with eager anticipation. "Here," she said breathlessly, "it's for you. I searched everywhere, and when I found it, I knew it was meant for you. Please, open it." Jim looked down at the package, his fingers lingering on the ribbon before he carefully untied it. The paper fell away, revealing the gleaming watch chain. For a moment, he said nothing, only gazed at it, the silver links glinting softly in the lamplight. "It's perfect, isn't it?" Della said, her voice quivering with excitement. "Your watch deserves a chain like this. No more leather strap. Now you can carry it with pride, the way it was meant to be carried." Jim's lips curved into a smile, but it was a smile filled with both love and something bittersweet. He reached into his coat pocket slowly, as though the weight there was heavier than it should be. He drew out a small package, wrapped neatly in brown paper, and placed it in her hands. "Before I say anything," he said softly, "open this. It's for you." Her hands trembled as she untied the string and peeled back the wrapping. Inside lay a pair of combs, beautiful, jeweled combs, the kind she had admired for months in the shop window downtown, tortoiseshell with delicate edges, sparkling with tiny gems that caught the lamplight and scattered it like stars. Della gasped, her fingers flying to her short curls instinctively. For a moment, words failed her. She could only stare at the combs, so lovely, so elegant, so completely beyond anything she had ever dreamed she might own. Her eyes filled with tears as she looked up at Jim. "Oh, Jim," she whispered, "my hair! It's gone! I can't wear them now!" Jim stepped closer, gently taking the combs from her hands and setting them aside. Then he touched her cheek tenderly. "And I," he said with a quiet clucker, "no longer have my watch. I sold it to buy those combs for you." The words sank into the room like a gentle snowfall, soft and almost unbelievable. For a long hushed moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Della's eyes widened as she understood. The watch chain in his hands, the combs resting on the table, both beautiful, both chosen with love, yet both now without purpose. She let out a trembling laugh, half sob, half joy, and threw her arms around him. "Oh, Jim," she whispered against his shoulder, her voice thick with tears. "What have we done?" He held her tightly, his chin resting on her cropped hair, his embrace warm and steady. "We have given each other the greatest gift, the gift of sacrifice, the gift of love." The little apartment seemed to glow in that moment, not from the lamp, not from the fire, but from something deeper, something eternal that needed no wrapping or no ribbon. Della lifted her head, smiling through her tears. "We are foolish, aren't we?" Jim shook his head gently. "No, my dear, not foolish, just wise in our own way."
The little apartment fell into silence after the laughter and tears, the kind of silence that feels like a blanket, soft, heavy, and filled with comfort. The gifts, so lovingly chosen, lay upon the table, their purpose undone by love's hand. And yet,
The room did not feel empty. On the contrary, it felt fuller than ever before. Della nestled against Jim's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Outside, snowflakes tapped gently against the window pane, as if the night itself were leaning close to listen. The city's bustle had faded, leaving only the occasional jingle of sleigh bells in the distance. It was Christmas Eve, and though there were no grand feasts, no glittering decorations, no piles of presents under a tree, there was something far greater. "Do you remember," Della whispered after a long pause, "the day we moved into this apartment?" Jim chuckled softly, his arms tightening around her. "I remember you tripped over the carpet carrying a lamp, and I thought you'd broken it." She laughed, the sound light and musical, though tears still clung to her lashes. "We had nothing but a few dishes and that old chair. But I thought, as long as we had each other, we could make it a home." "And you were right," he said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "We built a home with laughter, not with things." Della smiled and closed her eyes. She thought of the combs, shining like jewels on the table. She thought of the chain, its silver links catching the light. They were useless now, yes, but they were not meaningless. They were tokens, symbols, proof of how far love could reach, how much it could give. Jim leaned back slightly, gazing at her with quiet wonder. "Della, do you realize what tonight has shown us?" She tilted her head. "What do you mean?" "That no matter how little we have," he said softly, "we are richer than most because we have each other, because we're willing to give up what we treasure most for the sake of the other's happiness." Her throat tightened, and she could only nod. The fire crackled softly in the hearth, though its warmth was meager. Still, wrapped in Jim's arms, Della felt no chill. She thought of the Magi, the wise men who had traveled far to bring gifts to a child, gifts of great value. Their offerings were precious, but they were given with love, and that made them holy. And now, here in this tiny apartment, two modern Magi had offered their treasures too. Not gold, frankincense, or myrrh, but hair and a watch. Not riches of the world, but riches of the heart. She lifted her head and whispered, "Jim, do you think we're foolish?" His eyes softened, his smile gentle. "If being foolish means loving you this much, then yes, and I would be foolish 1,000 times over." Her laughter mingled with his, and the sound seemed to fill the little room with light. As the night wore on, they set the gifts carefully back in their boxes, not with regret, but with reverence. Perhaps one day, when her hair grew long again, the combs would rest proudly among her curls. Perhaps one day, when fortunes change, another watch might be found to meet the chain. But even if that day never came, it mattered little, for the true gift had already been unwrapped, revealed in sacrifice, and sealed in love. They shared a simple meal that night, bread, a bit of cheese, and tea brewed from leaves stretched thin. Yet it tasted sweeter than any banquet, for each bite was flavored with gratitude. They spoke of dreams for the future, of brighter days, of a family perhaps, of small joys that might one day come their way. And when at last they prepared to sleep, Della snuggled close, her head resting beneath Jim's chest. The lamp flickered low, shadows dancing across the walls. The world outside was still, wrapped in a snowy hush. In the quiet, a final thought drifted through Della's heart, tender and sure. This is Christmas. Not the ribbons, not the glitter, not the gifts in boxes, but this closeness, this giving, this love. And so the story of the Magi found its way into their lives. For the Magi, as O. Henry once wrote, were wise. They brought gifts, but more than that, they brought sacrifice and devotion. And though Jim and Della had nothing left in their hands, they had proven themselves just as wise. In that little apartment, on that snowy Christmas Eve, the greatest treasures shone brightest. Treasures unseen, untouchable, yet everlasting. And as sleep gently claimed them, the night whispered its benediction. Of all who give and receive gifts, these two are the wisest. They are the Magi. The snow fell softly outside, the stars glittered faintly above, and love, pure and enduring, held watch through the quiet hours. And so, dear listener, as you drift toward your own dreams, remember the lesson of Jim and Della. True wealth is not counted in coins or measured in things. It is found in the heart that gives, in the love that sacrifices, in the quiet strength of two souls bound together. Rest now with that truth close to your heart. Let it warm you. Let it soothe you. Let it guide you into the gentlest of dreams. Good night.